The seventh house, that deals with a number of things. Primarily, it deals with a marriage partner or partnerships in general, other people in your life. It's a house that deals with projection. Whenever we are trying to get a sense of what is the personality of the partner going to be like, or what is the influence of the partner going to be like in our life, we can look to the seventh house, the placement of the seventh lord, and the planets, their natural indications as well as their house lord indications in the seventh house. For example, if you have the ruler of the seventh and the 12th in bad dignity, well, some people might say that that can cause loss of or distance from death of the spouse. It's possible. Again, we need to really relate it to other things within the chart to see if that's true. Usually when the seventh lord is in the eighth, for me that's more of death of the spouse. But 12th is loss, distance. If you have the ruler of the seventh lord in the 12th, well, the 12th lord deals with our expenses, and let's say that seventh lord is in good dignity. What can that mean? Well, now we have the ruler of the seventh, which is the spouse or partnerships, in the 12th, which are our expenses, in good dignity, which can indicate that our partnerships, or our spouse even, can help with our expenses, can alleviate our burdens, our debts, and so on. So whenever you're thinking about combinations, you need to think about what is the house lord? What is the dignity of the house lord? What does that house mean? And then what house does it go into? What does that house mean? And then add them up, put them together, see how they function. Similarly, if we have the ruler of the fifth in the seventh, I use this example a lot because it's an easy one. If the ruler of the fifth, which deals with children, is in bad dignity in the seventh house of a person's chart, while that doesn't necessarily mean that there are problems with marriage, although it means there are some problems. But what that really tells me is that having children or children are going to cause stress within the marriage, because the fifth house is children, creativity. That goes into the seventh house, which is the marriage partner, and so it can cause stress with that marriage partner. And I don't know how many times I've seen that, where someone is just set on having children, and I look at their chart and you can see, well, you can probably have children, but I don't think this is going to be very good for your marriage. And they do it, and they say, but I just thought that, we just have a family, it'd work out great. And it didn't. And that's one way that you can tell these sorts of things. So, we'd recommend remedial measures for that person. But if someone has some self-awareness, they might want to ask themselves, maybe children isn't the thing that I need to shoot for, particularly if I want to be in a relationship, which is very important in Vedic astrology because everyone wants everything, meaning they want to have the career, they want to have the partner, they want to have the spirituality, they want to have the money, they want to have time to do all their hobbies, and that's not how it works. There are trade-offs, which means if you put attention towards one planet, something else suffers, which is why if you have all exalted planets, that's not even really that great, because now you have all these powerful desires vying for your time and attention, and so you end up really not getting anywhere. So it's good to, when you're assessing a chart, think about what's most important for me in this life. What is it that I feel truly inspired, called towards? And what are the planets that will help me there? And work towards those planets. That's where you're going to find more success. To have the expectation that you can have everything, that always leads to sorrow. That's never going to lead to anything but sorrow. So it's really about, where do you want to go? What do you need to get there? And then you have to let the rest fall by the wayside. If you can do that, you'll be successful. And if you're not successful, you'll be happy that you at least tried. But anyway, back to the point. So indications of the seventh house, partnerships, business partnerships, dealing with commerce and trade, because the seventh house is related to Libra, and Libra is a primary sign that deals with trade. In Gemini, if you got your Atmakaraka in Libra in the Navamsha, then that will show that part of your life is learning to have balance and trade, work with people in that way in a fair fashion. So whereas the first house represents you, the seventh house represents others. So your experience of others consistently on a long-term basis will be reflected in the influences on that seventh house. Seventh house also shows the qualities that we tend to underrate in ourselves. So that's where the projection comes into play. It's those things that we appreciate in others more so, particularly close partners. It's said that the seventh house deals both with enemies and with loved ones, because they're the closest things to us for projection. When we have enemies, we're projecting ourselves out there. That's you might say the darker side of us. I don't know if that's a good word. With our loved ones, it's also a form of projection. One thing you can also consider when we're considering enemies and partners is if the enemy is going to become a partner for you, consider the seventh lord and the sixth in bad dignity. That shows the partner going into the sixth, the house of enemies, which can show the partner suffering from enemies or becoming an enemy. Seventh lord in the sixth, in good dignity, partner helps you deal with your enemies, helps you deal with your debts, which is similar to the 12th house issue that we just talked about. The seventh house is the 10th from the 10th, which means that if you went to the 10th house and you counted 10 from the 10th house, you'd come to the 7th. And this is why the 7th house deals with our public image and the attainments of positions and status. So to check status, attainment of positions, you want to look at the 10th house, but you also want to look at the 7th house to see if they're related. If you get the ruler of the 7th and the 10th and the ruler of the 10th and the 7th, good dignity, well supported, excellent. Excellent for public image. What is a person going to have positive public image in? Well, consider the planets that are involved. The innate qualities of the planets and also the house lords that the planets rule. So specific indications: the spouse, the marriage partner, business partners. How do you relate to business partners? Because it'll be the same. Long-term relationships, partnerships, sexual passions. The 7th house, believe it or not, can deal with intercourse, sex, hence sexual passions. The 8th house is often attributed to sex and sexual passions, but it's considered to be the conjugal bond, meaning 7th house is sex, meaning you get together and you act like animals, you go your separate ways. 8th house is actually developing a connection through it. So yes, 8th house is sex, but it's more of the deeper capacity to connect in that way. The 7th house can deal with residence and foreign lands. Again, why? Because it's as far away from us as we can get. It's on the other side of us within the chart, first house being us. When it comes to areas of the body, the 7th house deals with our veins, but also the sexual organs, or our loins. 7th house deals with courts. What are your experiences within courts? And that's kind of interesting because you have the 6th house, which is enemies. You have the 8th house, which is the battle. And you've got the court in the middle. The 7th house is courts. The primary karaka that you want to check for the 7th house is Venus. So when you assess the 7th house, see what it says. Then go look at Venus. See if there are similar influences on both of these things. If there are, whatever those similarities are, talk about those things. Pay attention to those things. That's where the karma is going to be strongest. If there are differences, well, it doesn't always cancel itself out. But again, you always want to find that confluence. Those are going to be the strongest karmas to talk about. The 7th house is a Kendra, an angular house, but it's also called a Marka, or killer house. Sometimes when 7th Lord is involved in certain transits or certain combinations, it can cause death to those things. The primary Varga that you want to look at for the 7th, also similar to the 5th, is the Saptamsha, because that deals with the ability to be co-creative in relationships and the ability to, it's more of a dating kind of energy. So 9th Navamsha deals with more committed relationships, and the 7th deals with more of those initial meetings, but it also deals with sexuality aspects of things and how well do you get along with those people that you're dating and how co-creative can you be within a partnership.